Have you ever pondered the profound complexities of the human soul in its quest for divine connection? Today, we delve into the depths of such complexities through the prism of John Donne's metaphysical poetry. Our focus is on the song "Batter My Heart, Three-Personed God," a masterpiece that encapsulates Donne's spiritual fervor and his ceaseless pursuit of divine union. John Donne, a towering figure in the realm of metaphysical poetry, was a man of many contradictions. A cleric in the Church of England, Donne's poetry often reflected his internal struggle and his yearning for God. His work is a testament to the human spirit's relentless quest for understanding and connection. In this video, we will dissect "Batter My Heart, Three-Personed God," peeling back its layers to reveal the rich tapestry of emotions, metaphors, and spiritual yearnings that Donne has woven into it. So sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for an enlightening journey into the depths of this profound song. Dive into the first verse, where Donne pleads for divine intervention. This verse is a fervent appeal to God, a cry for help, and an acknowledgement of his spiritual struggle. It begins with the words, "Batter my heart, three-personed God," a violent, almost shocking request. But why this violent plea? Well, the underlying paradox here is that Donne is asking for destruction only to be remade, to be broken only to be made whole again. Continuing the verse, Donne uses the metaphor of a besieged town to describe his soul. He feels trapped, captured by the enemy, which could be interpreted as sin or spiritual blindness. He's asking God to overthrow this enemy, to break, blow, and burn the walls of this metaphorical town. This violent imagery may seem contradictory for a man of faith, but it's Donne's way of expressing his desperate need for God's intervention. The paradox deepens as Donne uses the illusion of a betrothal gone wrong. He believes he's betrothed to God, but he feels that he's been unjustly taken by the enemy. He's asking God to divorce him from this enemy, even though, in the biblical sense, divorce is seen as a negative act. Yet, Donne uses this negative concept to express his yearning for spiritual liberation. In the final lines, Donne communicates his inability to free himself, explaining that he loves God and yet he is betrothed to the enemy. He needs God to break this paradoxical bond, to free him from his spiritual struggle. This first verse is a masterful blend of paradox, metaphor, and illusion, creating a vivid picture of Donne's spiritual struggle. It's a plea for divine intervention, a cry for help, and an acknowledgement of his own spiritual shortcomings. The violent imagery, the besieged town, the failed betrothal, all serve to highlight the intensity of his plea. With that, we unravel the paradoxical plea in the first verse, setting the stage for the subsequent exploration. Moving on to the second verse, we delve deeper into Donne's quest for spiritual transformation. Here, he continues to grapple with his spiritual failings embodied in the metaphor of a usurped town. This town, representing Donne's soul, has fallen under the sway of sin, and he yearns for God's grace to liberate him and re-establish his spiritual order. In this verse, Donne employs his signature metaphysical conceits to underscore his spiritual conflict. For instance, he likens his condition to a captive town beset by an enemy force, portraying his struggle with sin and his need for divine intervention. He further amplifies this metaphor by calling for God to batter his heart, a plea for a forceful, even violent, divine intervention to help him overcome his spiritual failings. Donne also uses paradox in his plea, requesting God to break, blow, burn, and make me new. This seemingly contradictory desire of destruction leading to creation echoes the paradoxical nature of Christian salvation, where death leads to eternal life. Through this, Donne captures the essence of his spiritual struggle, yearning for divine grace while acknowledging the pain of spiritual transformation. The second verse is a testament to Donne's desperation for divine grace. He acknowledges his inability to free himself from his spiritual bondage, emphasizing his dependence on God. His plea for God to batter his heart is not just a cry for help, but a recognition of his need for a transformative divine intervention that will dismantle his old self and resurrect him anew. The metaphysical conceits and paradoxes in this verse serve to illuminate Donne's spiritual conflict. They paint a vivid picture of his struggle with sin and his yearning for divine grace, providing profound insights into his spiritual journey. Thus, the second verse unveils Donne's desperate pursuit of divine grace amidst his inner turmoil. The third verse brings us to Donne's profound realization of his spiritual condition. In this verse, Donne comes face to face with his spiritual shortcomings and the depth of his need for divine intervention. He acknowledges his inability to overcome his spiritual struggles on his own, hence his desperate plea for God's love and salvation. His plea is not meek, but rather it is impassioned and desperate, showcasing the depth of his spiritual yearning. The verse begins with a profound self-realization. Donne admits that he is captive to his own sinful nature. He recognizes that he cannot free himself from this bondage, and this realization is both terrifying and liberating. It's terrifying because he understands the gravity of his spiritual condition, but at the same time, it's liberating because it leads him to the understanding that his salvation lies not in his own hands, but in God's. This self-realization is not an end in itself, but a means to an end. It leads Donne to acknowledge his need for God's love and salvation. He understands that he needs divine intervention to break free from his spiritual bondage. His plea for God's love is not a passive request, but a desperate cry for help. He is not asking God to gently guide him, but to forcefully invade his soul and overthrow the reign of sin. The imagery used in this verse is stark and powerful. Donne uses the language of invasion and overthrow to depict his spiritual struggle and his longing for divine intervention. This imagery underscores the intensity of his spiritual crisis and his desperate need for God's love. The third verse is significant in the overall theme of the song. It encapsulates Donne's spiritual journey from self-realization to the acknowledgement of his need for divine love and salvation. It underscores the intensity of his spiritual struggle and his desperate plea for God's intervention. The third verse, hence, captures Donne's profound self-realization and his longing for divine love. As we reach the end of our exploration, it's time to reflect on the profound insights gleaned from Donne's song. This metaphysical journey, encapsulated in just 14 lines of verse, has taken us deep into the heart of John Donne's spiritual struggle and his quest for divine love. We began by dissecting the first verse, which introduced us to the paradoxical plea of the poet. Donne implores God to batter his heart, a seemingly violent request that, upon deeper analysis, revealed a desperate yearning for spiritual transformation. The poet seeks to be broken only to be remade, to be vanquished only to be victorious in God's love. This paradox is emblematic of Donne's metaphysical poetry, where contradiction serves as a conduit for deeper truth. In the second verse, we delved into Donne's self-realization. He acknowledges his inability to free himself from the clutches of worldly temptation and hence seeks divine intervention. This verse marks a turning point in Donne's spiritual journey, where he surrenders his ego, thereby making way for the divine to enter. The third verse, laden with powerful imagery, encapsulates the poet's yearning for divine love. Donne uses the metaphor of a captive maiden, symbolizing his soul held captive by sin, to express his longing for God's liberating love. Despite the seemingly harsh and violent imagery, the underlying sentiment is one of intense love and yearning for spiritual union with God. Throughout this exploration, we've seen how Donne's "Batter My Heart" three-person God is not just a plea for divine intervention, but also a testament to his spiritual journey. It gives us a glimpse into Donne's personal struggle with sin and his yearning for redemption. His willingness to face his flaws and his desperate plea for divine intervention make his spiritual journey relatable and human. This poem, like much of Donne's work, is steeped in the metaphysical, yet it resonates with readers even today due to its exploration of universal human experiences, the struggle with sin, the yearning for transformation, and the quest for divine love. Despite its religious undertones, "Batter My Heart," three-personed God, transcends the confines of religion and offers profound insights into the human condition. So, what can we take away from this exploration of Donne's song? Perhaps it's the understanding that spiritual transformation is not a passive process but requires active engagement. Or maybe it's the realization that paradoxes and contradictions are not barriers to truth, but gateways to deeper understanding. Or perhaps it's the simple yet profound wisdom that love, even divine love, is not a peaceful idol, but a powerful, transformative force. As the year draws to an end, we bid adieu with the profound wisdom gleaned from John Donne's Batter My Heart, Three-Personed God. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning,